Montana's wilderness held no mercy at 2 in the morning. Commander Marcus Kane felt the cold bite through his tactical gear as he led his four-man team along the ridge trail, their boots crunching frost-hardened pine needles. The Border Patrol had turned up nothing, 3 days of tracking rumors that proved to be shadows. His wolf stirred restlessly beneath his skin, sensing something his human mind couldn't quite grasp yet. The first bullet shattered that illusion. Rock exploded 6 inches from Marcus's head. Training took over before conscious thought could interfere. He dropped, rolled, came up with his sidearm drawn. The muzzle flashes lit up the tree line like scattered stars, 12 positions, maybe more. His team scattered into defensive formation without needing orders. 20 years of running operations together had made them extensions of each other. Colonel James Reed hit the ground beside him, returning fire with controlled bursts. The man's salt and pepper hair caught moonlight as he pivoted, dropping an attacker who'd gotten too close. 48 years old and still moving like a soldier, half his age, though Marcus had noticed a slight hesitation in his movements lately, the way Reed favored his left side after long marches. Bullets tore through the underbrush. Sergeant Cooper, the oldest among them at 52, had taken cover behind a fallen cedar and was methodically eliminating targets with his rifle. Each shot found its mark with the precision of a Vietnam-era sniper who'd never lost his edge. Lieutenant Hayes coordinated their defensive perimeter over comms, her voice calm despite the chaos. Corporal Martinez, the youngest at 26, provided suppressing fire that gave them breathing room. The ambush was professional, coordinated. These weren't random rogues looking for trouble. Marcus shifted, letting his wolf surface just enough to enhance his senses. Scents flooded in gun oil blood, and underneath it all, the distinctive musk of ironwood pack. His jaw tightened. Victor Cross's people this far into his territory. That meant something had changed and not for the better. The firefight lasted 4 minutes that felt like hours. When the last attacker fell silent, Marcus counted 6 hostiles dead in the immediate area. His enhanced hearing caught the retreat of 2 more crashing through the forest with panicked urgency. Cooper had taken a graze across his shoulder. Martinez was bleeding from a cut above his eye. Reed moved stiffly, though he waved off concern with typical stubbornness. One attacker still breathed, clutching a gut wound that would kill him slowly. Marcus approached, weapon trained on the man's head. The fighter couldn't have been more than 30, with Ironwood's triple claw tattoo visible on his neck. Fear and defiance warred in his expression as Marcus crouched beside him. The words came out harsh, pain-edged, but deliberate. "The war is coming. You can't stop it." Marcus kept his voice level, almost gentle. "What war?" Blood bubbled at the corner of the man's mouth. "The last Omega will be the first to fall." The phrase sent ice down Marcus's spine. He leaned closer, trying to keep the dying man conscious long enough for answers. "What does that mean?" But death came first, stealing whatever intelligence the fighter might have revealed. Marcus straightened, scanning the bodies with a tactical eye. 12 had attacked. 6 lay dead here. 2 escaped. 4 were missing, either fled in different directions or never engaged. The math bothered him. 12 fighters for a single patrol suggested either gross overconfidence or that this had been a probing attack testing his response time and capabilities. Reed appeared at his shoulder rifle slung and already on the radio coordinating cleanup. "Ironwood pack, all of them." Marcus nodded, his mind already 3 steps ahead. "Get Hayes to run facial recognition on whatever we can salvage. I want to know who authorized an incursion this deep into our territory." The question hung unspoken between them. How long until the next attack? They secured the scene with practiced efficiency, photographing evidence, collecting weapons, tagging bodies. Hayes arrived with a forensics team 20 minutes later, her expression grim as she surveyed the carnage. She'd been his tactical coordinator for 10 years, a rare female alpha whose strategic mind had saved countless operations. Her dark eyes met his with shared understanding. This was an escalation they couldn't ignore. Dawn broke cold and gray as they finally headed back. Marcus drove in silence, his hands steady on the wheel despite the adrenaline crash trying to set in. Reed sat in the passenger seat, studying the photos Hayes had already uploaded to his tablet. The man's jaw worked with suppressed tension, a tell Marcus had learned to read decades ago. The words came quiet, heavy with implications Marcus didn't want to examine. "The last Omega will be the first to fall." Reed glanced over. "Means anything to you?" Marcus shook his head, though unease coiled in his gut. "Not yet. but it will. They reached the war memorial just as full light touched the granite wall. Marcus pulled over without conscious decision, drawn by a ritual he couldn't quite break. The wall bore 327 names wolves who'd fallen in the last Civil War of 1975. He knew every single one, had studied their files, learned their stories, visited their families. The weight of command meant carrying the dead as surely as leading the living. Reed joined him at the wall without comment. They'd made this pilgrimage together more times than either could count. The name at the top, Alpha Jonathan Reeves, had been Reed's mentor, the man who'd taught them both what it meant to lead. Reed's finger traced the carved letters with the reverence of old grief. Marcus's reflection stared back from the polished stone. 42 years old with more gray in his dark hair than he'd had last year, lines carved deep around his eyes from squinting into too many battlefields. He looked tired, felt older than his years. The burden of being AlphaKing for 2 decades showed in every weathered line of his face. The promise he'd made at this wall 15 years ago echoed in memory. No more wars, no more kids dying. He'd meant it then, still meant it now. But intention and reality rarely aligned in his world. Reed's voice cut through his thoughts, rough with something that might have been fear. If they're coming for true Omegas again. Marcus didn't let him finish. We stopped that practice 40 years ago. The unspoken truth settled between them. Stopping something and keeping it stopped were different challenges entirely. The drive back to headquarters took them through Silver Ridge territory, Montana wilderness, giving way to the small town that served as his PAC's civilian center. Normal humans lived here, too unaware of the supernatural government structure running parallel to their own. The diner served breakfast to both species without distinction. The hardware store sold tools to paws and hands alike. Peace, fragile and hard-won, built on secrets and careful management. Marcus wondered how long it would last. His phone rang as they pulled into the secured compound. Hayes's voice carried the clipped efficiency of bad news delivered without preamble. "Sir, we've got a situation. Council wants you in Seattle, today." Marcus checked his watch. 7:15. Define situation. A pause pregnant with implications. "The intelligence brief you've been waiting for. It's ready. And sir, you're going to want Reed with you." The line went dead before he could respond. Marcus met Reed's questioning look and saw his own concern reflected back. If Hayes thought this required both of them, the situation had just escalated beyond a simple border incursion. They were wheels up 90 minutes later, the private jet cutting through morning clouds toward Seattle. Marcus used the flight time to review preliminary reports Hayes had uploaded. Each page made his chest tighter. 15 traditionalist PACs forming an alliance. Leadership traced back to Victor Cross. Mobilization estimated at 6 months out. The numbers were bad. The implications worse. But it was the final note that made his blood run cold. An intelligence suggests primary objective involves true Omega acquisition and utilization. He'd hoped that part of werewolf history had died with the old guard. Apparently, hope was a luxury he couldn't afford. Seattle's skyline emerged through cloud cover, the Space Needle gleaming in rare winter sunlight. The council building sat in the financial district, indistinguishable from the corporate towers surrounding it, except for the security measures invisible to civilian eyes. Marcus had spent more time in these conference rooms than he cared to calculate, arguing policy and preventing conflicts. Today felt different. Today felt like the end of peace and the beginning of something darker. The war room occupied the 20th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Elliott Bay, the water gray and choppy under winter wind. 8 Alpha representatives occupied the table, leaders from major PACs spanning Washington, Oregon, Montana, Idaho, and the Dakotas. Marcus knew every face had fought beside most of them, had occasionally opposed all of them when principle demanded it. Today their expressions carried uniform gravity. Hayes stood at the head of the table beside a projection screen, her tactical blacks marking her as military rather than political. She waited until Marcus and Reed took their seats before starting the brief. No pleasantries, no preamble, just facts delivered with surgical precision. The first slide showed a map of the Pacific Northwest with red markers indicating traditionalist PAC territories. 15 in total clustered along the Idaho-Montana border with tentacles reaching into eastern Washington and Oregon. The second slide listed leadership Victor Cross at the top with 12 subordinate alphas forming a council structure that mirrored and mocked Marcus's own government. Hayes's voice remained neutral, but Marcus heard the edge underneath. Victor Cross has consolidated power over the past 18 months. He's recruited alphas who fought in the 75 Warwolves, who remember the old ways and resent current restrictions. Alpha Gerald from Boise 58 and Grizzled from decades of territorial management leaned forward. What's his endgame? The next slide answered before Hayes could speak. A manifesto written in Victor's unmistakable rhetorical style, calling for a return to traditional pack structure. Might makes right. Alpha dominance reestablished. Omegas return to their proper place. True Omegas recognized as strategic assets rather than protected individuals. Marcus's hands fisted under the table. Strategic assets, clinical language for ownership slavery breeding programs. Hayes continued, her words falling like hammer blows. Historical context: during World War II, werewolf special operations units used true omega pheromones as combat enhancers. Males exposed to true omega scent during heightened states show 2 to 300% increase in strength, aggression, and pain tolerance. Effects last approximately 48 hours per exposure. All right, Alpha Patricia from Portland 43 and progressive to her core looked ill. We banned that practice in 1952. Hayes nodded. Domestic ban, yes, but the research survived. Victor's been studying it. We have intelligence suggesting he's been searching for true omegas specifically to recreate the program. The room erupted in arguments. Voices overlapped, some outraged, some pragmatic. Some, Marcus noted with alarm, calculating. He let it run for 30 seconds before standing. The room fell silent with the weight of his authority. His voice carried the command of 20 years ruling 8 territories. True omegas are people, not weapons. That's not a debate. It's law. Gerald's response came careful, political. But if Victor's rebuilding that capability and we refuse to match it, we're fighting with one hand tied. Marcus turned on him with controlled fury. Then we fight with one hand, because the alternative is becoming exactly what we fought to stop. Reed's quiet interjection cut through the tension. How many true omegas are we talking about? Current population? Hayes pulled up another slide. 3 photographs, all surveillance shots. 3 confirmed living in North America, 2 in Canada under their government's protection. 1 here. The 3rd photograph showed a woman in her early 30s, dark hair pulled back, moving through what looked like a military installation. The image quality suggested it had been taken without her knowledge from a distance. Marcus studied her face, strong features, guarded expression, the bearing of someone trained in operational security. Hayes continued. Sarah Winters, age 32, former Army intelligence, recruited into our deep cover program 8 years ago. Current assignment monitoring traditionalist cells. She's been operating in Eastern Washington, gathering intelligence on Victor's organization. Alpha Marcus from Idaho frowned. Does Victor know she's true omega? A pause waited with complication. Unknown. She's been using military-grade suppressants, but our analysis suggests those are failing. Organ damage consistent with long-term suppression. She has maybe 6 months before complete breakdown. Marcus processed the implications. An intelligence asset, highly trained, currently embedded in enemy territory, whose biological nature could turn her into Victor's primary target if discovered. The tactical nightmare unfolded in his mind with crystal clarity. Reed voiced the question everyone was thinking. Is she aware we know what she is? Hayes shook her head. Need to know basis. She was recruited for her intelligence background, not her biology. We monitored her medical situation but didn't intervene because she was effective. Now circumstances have changed. Marcus's jaw tightened. Bring her in. Today. The screen flickered to a new image, a compound in Idaho, satellite footage showing security patterns and structural layouts. Hayes pointed to the main building. Before we pull her, there's an opportunity. Victor's holding a prisoner at his Ironwood facility. Elena Winters, Sarah's older sister, also true omega. She's been in Victor's custody for 6 years. The room went still. 6 years of captivity for a true omega under a traditionalist alpha painted a picture none of them wanted to examine too closely. Marcus thought of the dying fighter's words, "The last omega will be the first to fall," and cold certainty settled in his chest. His voice came flat, commanding. Extraction operation. Reed will run it. I want Sarah Winters brought in for debriefing and I want Elena Winters out of Victor's hands. How fast can we move? Hayes had clearly anticipated the order. Sarah's expecting contact within 48 hours for her regular intelligence drop. We can use that as cover. Insertion team can be ready in 12 hours. Reed was already studying the compound layout, his tactical mind processing approach, vectors, and exit strategies. Marcus watched his oldest friend work, noting again the subtle slowness in his movements, the way he rubbed his left side when he thought no one was looking. 20 years of running operations together had taught Marcus to read every tell. The words came quiet, meant only for Reed. You up for this? Reed didn't look away from the screen. The lie sat heavy between them. Marcus let it pass because the mission mattered more than pride, and Reed would never forgive him for benching him over something as mundane as pain. Whatever was wrong, Reed was handling it. Had to be. The briefing continued for another hour, covering logistics, backup plans, and worst-case scenarios. Alpha Gerald raised concerns about escalation. Alpha Patricia argued for diplomatic approaches. Marcus listened with half his attention while his mind ran through combat scenarios. He'd stopped trusting diplomacy somewhere around the Third Territorial War. Peace required strength, and strength required willingness to use it. The meeting broke for lunch. Marcus found himself standing at the window, watching ferries cross the Sound. The water looked cold enough to kill. Reed appeared at his elbow with coffee, the good kind they kept in the executive kitchen, rather than the motor oil the General Pot produced. Reed's voice carried the weight of old friendship and current worry. You're thinking about going yourself. Marcus accepted the coffee without looking away from the view. Hayes can coordinate from here. You can lead the assault team. But if we're pulling Sarah Winters into protective custody and extracting her sister from hostile bio territory, I should be there. A pause, the kind that preceded arguments they'd had 100 times. You're the Alpha King. You don't do ground operations anymore. Marcus finally turned to face him. I'm also the soldier who doesn't send his people where he won't go. That hasn't changed. Reed's expression shifted through frustration, resignation, and something that looked almost like relief. Then I guess we're both going. The operation briefing happened at 1600 hours in a secured conference room. Marcus's tactical team assembled Reed as second-in-command, Hayes coordinating from Seattle, and 3 operators he'd worked with for years. Sergeant Cooper, 52, with sniper skills honed in jungles half a world away. Lieutenant Holt, 35, demolitions expert with more confirmed building demolitions than anyone wanted to count. Corporal Chen, 32, quiet as death and twice as efficient. Corporal Davis, 29, their medic nervous energy barely contained under professional calm. Hayes walked them through the mission parameters with clinical precision. Insertion at 2300 hours. Halo jump into the mountains 15 kilometers from target. Ground approach on foot, minimal electronic signature. Objective 1, make contact with Sarah Winters at her safe house. Objective 2, infiltrate Ironwood compound and extract Elena Winters. Objective 3, exfiltrate all personnel to extraction point by 0600. Questions. Holt raised a hand. What's the hostile count? Hayes pulled up thermal imaging of the compound. Best estimate 40 fighters on site. Victor Cross confirmed present. Security rotation every 4 hours. Our window is between 0200 and 0400 when fatigue is highest. Cooper studied the terrain map with professional interest. Approach is exposed. 300 meters of open ground between tree line and compound wall. Hayes nodded. Chen will provide overwatch from the ridge. Suppressed weapons, night vision thermal imaging. If this goes loud, we abort and extract. Marcus listened to his team analyze the mission with the ease of soldiers who'd done this dance too many times. The planning was solid. The team was experienced. The intelligence was good as it ever got. But something in his gut twisted with premonition. 20 years of combat had taught him to trust that instinct. Reed caught his eye across the table, one eyebrow raised in silent question. Marcus gave a fractional nod. They'd proceed, but carefully. The briefing wrapped at 1730. Wheels up at 2100 gave them time for equipment checks, final intel reviews, and the ritual meal before operations. Marcus found himself in the operations kitchen with his team sharing pizza and trading stories. The younger wolves listened with appropriate awe as Cooper recounted an operation in Panama that probably hadn't happened quite the way he described, but made for good telling anyway. Holt looked at Marcus with the casual irreverence that came from working together through impossible situations. Sir, serious question. Why are you coming? You're the Alpha King. You could send us and coordinate from here. The room went quiet. Marcus took his time answering, choosing words carefully. Because I don't send men where I won't go. Because if this operation goes sideways, I want to be there to make the call. And because sometimes the king needs to remember he's also a soldier. Reed raised his coffee cup. 20 years and he's still giving that same speech. Laughter broke the tension. Marcus threw a wadded napkin at Reed's head, which the older man caught without looking. The easy camaraderie felt precious, suddenly fragile in the way things felt before combat. Marcus looked around the table at faces he knew as well as family and wondered which of them wouldn't make it back. The thought tried to paralyze him. He shoved it down with practiced discipline. Fear was a luxury soldiers couldn't afford. Equipment check happened at 2000 hours. Marcus went through his loadout with methodical precision: tactical vest communications gear, sidearm rifle, backup magazines, medical kit rations, water. Everything had a place. Everything served a purpose. The ritual of preparation cleared his mind, focused his attention on the immediate rather than the uncertain future. Reed worked through his own gear, nearby movements automatic but slower than they should be. Marcus watched him fumble a magazine twice before successfully loading it. The hesitation bothered him more than he wanted to admit. His voice came low enough the others wouldn't hear. James, talk to me. Reed didn't look up from his vest. Nothing to talk about. Marcus moved closer, crowding into his friend's space the way only 20 years of brotherhood allowed. I've known you since we were 18. I can read you better than tactical reports. Something's wrong. For a long moment, Reed said nothing. Then his shoulders sagged, fractionally defeat written in the smallest movements. I've got cancer, pancreatic, stage 4. The words hit like physical blows. Marcus felt his world tilt, recalibrate around this new terrible reality. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again and found no words adequate to the moment. Reed kept talking, voice flat with the exhaustion of carrying secrets. Diagnosed 6 months ago, doctors gave me 6 more, maybe 8. I've been managing symptoms, keeping it quiet. Didn't want to be benched for my last tour. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. Rage and grief warred in his chest, neither winning. You should have told me. Now Reed did look up, his eyes carrying the weight of terminal diagnosis and stubborn determination. Why, so you could pull me from operations, make me spend my last months pushing paper. I'm a soldier, Marcus. This is how I want to go out, in the field, with my brothers, doing something that matters. The logic was sound. It was also completely unacceptable. Marcus wanted to argue, to order Reed into medical care, to refuse this reality through sheer force of will. But he'd learned long ago that some fights couldn't be won with authority. His voice came rough with emotion he didn't bother hiding. Then we make this count. Reed's slight smile carried relief and gratitude. That's the plan. They finished equipment prep in silence, heavy with things unsaid. Marcus's mind raced through implications. Reed dying changed nothing about the mission, changed everything about what came after. Who would be his second? Who could possibly fill his shoes that had walked beside him for 2 decades? The questions would wait. Right now, they had a mission. The team assembled on the tarmac at 2100 hours. The C-130 waited with engines already running, prop wash whipping through Marcus's hair as they loaded. He took one last look at Seattle's skyline lights glittering against the darkness and wondered if he'd see it again. Hayes appeared at his elbow, tablet in hand with final updates. Sarah Winters knows you're coming. She's expecting contact at her safe house at 0100. Latest intelligence confirms Elena Winters is still at the compound basement detention. Victor's scheduled to leave at 0600 for a regional meeting, so if you're going to hit them, tonight's your window. Marcus nodded acknowledgement. If we're not at extraction by 0700, assume compromise and proceed with contingency plans. Hayes's expression tightened. Sir. He cut her off gently. That's an order, Lieutenant. If this goes bad, you keep the territory running. That's more important than any individual operation. She didn't argue, which told him she understood the stakes as well as he did. Her salute was precise, regulation perfect, and carried more weight than words. The flight to the drop zone took 90 minutes. Marcus used the time to review mission parameters one final time, drilling details into memory until he could run the operation blind. Beside him, Reed did the same with focused intensity. Across the cargo bay, Cooper cleaned his rifle with meditative care. Holt checked detonators. Chen sat perfectly still, conserving energy for the work ahead. Davis organized his medical kit for the third time. At 22:45, the loadmaster signaled 5 minutes to drop. Marcus stood checking his team's equipment with practiced efficiency. Each man got a firm grip on the shoulder, a moment of connection before they threw themselves into darkness. The rear ramp lowered. Cold air screamed into the cabin at 12,000 feet. Montana wilderness stretched below, invisible in the darkness, except where moonlight caught on snow. Marcus adjusted his oxygen mask, checked his altimeter, and stepped to the edge. Reed appeared beside him. No words necessary. They'd done this together more times than either could count. The green light flashed. Marcus threw himself into the night. Free fall lasted 40 seconds of pure silence and rushing air. Marcus tracked his altitude, watching numbers spiral down 10,000, 8,000, 6,000. At 4,000 feet, he pulled his chute. The canopy deployed with familiar violence, jerking him from free fall to controlled descent. His team materialized around him, 5 chutes gliding through darkness toward the designated landing zone. They touched down in a clearing 3 kilometers from Sarah's safe house. Chutes were buried within minutes. The team moved out in tactical formation, weapons ready, senses alert for any sign they'd been detected. The forest closed around them like a living thing, pine scent thick in the cold air. Marcus let his wolf surface enough to enhance his senses. Sound crystallized wind through branches, small animals moving through underbrush, the synchronized breathing of his team. Scent painted the world in chemical signatures, pine sap, decaying leaves, and underneath it all, no trace of other wolves. They were alone. The safe house appeared through the trees at 057, a cabin built to look abandoned, but reinforced with materials that would stop small arms fire. A single light burned in the window, the prearranged signal that Sarah was present and uncompromised. Marcus signaled his team into perimeter positions and approached the front door alone. His knock 3 quick 2, slow 3 quick identified him before he spoke. The door opened immediately. Sarah Winters looked nothing like her surveillance photographs. Those had captured surface details, dark hair, strong features, operational bearing. In person, she radiated competence that went beyond training into something essential. Her eyes assessed him in the 3 seconds before stepping aside, checking for threats, reading his body language, calculating risk factors with the speed of someone who'd survived 8 years undercover. Marcus entered. The cabin's interior matched the exterior's deception. Minimal furniture, no personal items. Everything positioned for quick abandonment. Sarah moved to the window, checking sightlines with automatic caution before speaking. Her voice carried traces of East Coast origins, buried under years of operational accent neutrality. "Commander Kane, I was told to expect you at 0100. You're early." Marcus appreciated the lack of deference. Competence deserved respect regardless of rank. "Plans changed. We're moving up the extraction timeline." Sarah's expression didn't shift, but her posture tightened fractionally. "Extraction, not intelligence handoff." He laid it out without preamble. "Your suppressants are failing. Medical analysis says you have maybe 6 months before complete organ failure. Victor Cross is actively searching for true omegas to use in a combat enhancement program. You're compromised, you're a target, and you're coming in." Sarah processed this with visible calculation, running through implications and options with the speed of trained intelligence work. Her response came measured. "I'm 3 weeks from finishing my infiltration of Victor's communication network. If you pull me now," Marcus interrupted, "you'll be alive to try again. Stay, and you'll either die from suppression failure or Victor will discover what you are. Neither outcome serves our mission." The logic was sound. Sarah knew it. He watched her reach the same conclusion he had already drawn, saw the moment her shoulders dropped fractionally in acceptance. "When?" He checked his watch. 20 minutes. "My team's outside. We hit Victor's compound at 0200 to extract your sister, then we all leave together." Something flickered in Sarah's expression at the mention of Elena, pain, hope, guilt. The emotional complexity vanished almost immediately behind operational calm, but Marcus had seen it. Family mattered even to soldiers trained to compartmentalize everything. Sarah nodded once. "Give me 5 minutes to sanitize the site." She moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency, removing any trace of her presence. False identity documents went into a small incinerator. Electronics were wiped and destroyed. Within 3 minutes, the cabin looked uninhabited. Within 5, she stood ready with a small pack and a weapon Marcus recognized as military issue, not civilian. He keyed his radio. Phase 1 complete. Moving to Phase 2. Reed's response came immediate. Copy. Team is moving to assault positions. They moved through the forest in tactical silence. Sarah kept pace without complaint, her movements showing military training that had never fully left her, despite 8 years in intelligence work. Marcus found himself reassessing her capabilities. Surveillance photographs and personnel files couldn't capture the way someone moved under pressure. The Ironwood compound appeared through the trees at 0145. Thermal imaging confirmed Hayes' intelligence, 40 signatures inside security patrols, running predictable patterns. Chen was already in position on the ridge, his scope trained on the compound. Holt had marked 3 entry points with infrared paint visible only through night vision. Cooper provided overwatch from the western approach. Reed materialized at Marcus's shoulder, face blackened with camouflage paint. We're ready. Your call. Marcus studied the compound one final time, looking for anything that felt wrong. The security seemed standard. The patrol patterns matched intelligence. Victor's presence was confirmed by thermal signature in the main building. Everything aligned with the plan, so why did his instincts scream caution? He pushed the unease aside. 20 years of operations had taught him that perfect plans didn't exist. You moved forward with the best intelligence available and adapted to chaos as it emerged. His voice carried command authority, reduced to a whisper. Execute. The breaching charges blew simultaneously at 0200, 3 small explosions that opened doors with surgical precision. Marcus's team flowed through the openings in practice choreography, weapons up, moving fast and silent. Suppressed gunfire sounded like harsh coughs as they cleared the first quarter. Resistance materialized faster than expected. Guards appeared from side rooms already armed and alert. Someone had known they were coming. Marcus filed that realization for later analysis and focused on immediate survival. His rifle barked twice. A guard dropped. Reed moved past him, clearing the next doorway with practiced efficiency. Holt's demolition work opened a path to the basement level. Sarah moved with them, her weapon up and professional. She wasn't just intelligence, someone had trained her for ground operations. She covered their 6 with calm precision that suggested extensive combat experience. The basement stairs descended into darkness, broken only by emergency lighting. Marcus descended fast, trusting his enhanced vision in the dim environment. The detention area sprawled across the basement, 6 cells, 5 empty, 1 occupied. Elena Winters looked like a ghost. 6 years of captivity showed in every hollow of her face, every prominent bone, every scar visible on exposed skin. Her silver-white hair hung lank and filthy. Her eyes held the kind of emptiness that came from sustained trauma. But when she saw Sarah, something human flickered back into her expression. Recognition. Hope. Fear that this might be another hallucination. Sarah crossed the space in 3 strides, her operational calm cracking. Elena, I'm here. I'm real. We're getting you out. Marcus worked on the cell lock while Reed covered the stairs. The mechanism clicked open. Elena stumbled forward into Sarah's arms, both women clutching each other with desperate intensity. The emotional reunion would have been touching if they weren't in a hostile compound with unknown numbers of enemy fighters converging on their position. Davis appeared, medical kit ready. He conducted a rapid assessment with gentle efficiency. Multiple old injuries, malnutrition, dehydration. She can walk, but we'll need to support her. Gunfire erupted from upstairs. Chen's voice crackled over comms. Multiple hostiles converging on your position. Count 20 plus. This is going loud. Marcus made the call without hesitation. Fighting withdrawal. Chen, give us covering fire. Cooper, secure extraction route. Move, move, move. They climbed the stairs into chaos. The compound had fully mobilized fighters pouring from multiple buildings. Marcus's team laid down suppressing fire as they retreated, each man covering the others in rotation. Sarah supported Elena with Davis's help, moving as fast as the weakened woman could manage. Holt set charges on their exit route, creating obstacles that slowed pursuit. Cooper's rifle sang from overwatch, each shot dropping an enemy fighter with mechanical precision. Chen's voice maintained steady updates on hostile positions and numbers. They reached the tree line with 40 meters of open ground left to cross. Marcus counted 5 hostile fighters between them and cover, probably more moving into position. The math was bad. Reed stepped forward, weapon up. I'll hold them. Get her out. Marcus's response came automatic command authority and personal desperation mixing. Negative, we go together. Reed turned and Marcus saw resignation in his friend's face. Brother, I'm dead anyway. 6 months, remember, let me choose how. The words from earlier came back with crushing weight. Let me go out fighting, with my brothers, doing something that matters. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to order Reed back, wanted to refuse this reality with every fiber of his being. But 20 years of brotherhood meant understanding when argument would only waste the time Reed was buying them. His hand found Reed's shoulder squeezed once with all the words they'd never say. Tell them I died well. Reed's smile carried peace Marcus envied. Always do. Then Reed was moving, providing covering fire that drew enemy attention and gave them space to run. Marcus grabbed Elena's other arm and hauled her toward the tree line with Sarah. Behind them, Reed's weapon fired steadily, methodically. A one-man army holding a corridor through sheer skill and determination. They reached cover. Marcus risked one look back. Reed stood alone against 40 fighters, weapon empty, now drawing his sidearm to continue the fight. He looked smaller, suddenly older mortal, in a way Marcus had never let himself acknowledge. Then smoke grenades detonated, filling the open ground with white concealment. Reed's voice came over comms one last time, calm and steady. Get them home, Marcus. That's an order. The channel went silent. Marcus heard the gunfire continue for another 30 seconds. Heard it intensify. Heard it stop. He stood frozen, every instinct screaming to go back, to not leave his brother behind. Sarah's hand on his arm brought him back to immediate reality. Sir, we need to move. Marcus forced his legs to function. They moved through the forest in tactical retreat, Chen and Cooper providing cover fire, Holt destroying their back trail with delayed charges. Elena stumbled between Sarah and Davis, barely conscious, but still moving. The extraction helicopter waited at the designated LZ rotors, already turning. They loaded with professional speed despite exhaustion and emotion. Marcus was last aboard, scanning the tree line one final time for any sign of Reed following. Nothing. Just darkness and the echo of gunfire that had stopped too soon. The helicopter lifted, banking hard toward Montana airspace. Through the window, Marcus watched the Ironwood compound recede into darkness. Somewhere down there, his oldest friend lay dead. 20 years of brotherhood ended in a basement corridor in Idaho. The mission was a success. They'd extracted both targets with minimal casualties. Intelligence would call it a win. Marcus felt only the weight of one death too many. Sarah sat across from him, Elena's head in her lap, the sisters reunited after 6 years of separation. She met his eyes with understanding that transcended words. She'd seen what Reed had done, understood the count. Her voice came soft under the helicopter's roar. He saved us all. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. 20 years of command had taught him to compartmentalize, to save grief for later when operational security allowed. Right now, they were still in hostile territory, still vulnerable to pursuit. But later, in the safety of headquarters, with the mission finally complete, Marcus would let himself feel the crushing weight of Reed's loss, would pour a drink and raise it to absent friends, would visit that memorial wall again and read 328 names instead of 327. Later, for now, he had people depending on him, a war to prevent, a territory to protect. The helicopter crossed into Montana airspace at 0630. Dawn broke behind them, painting the sky in shades of red that reminded Marcus too much of blood. The Seattle Operations Center felt too quiet at 0700. Marcus stood in the debriefing room watching Elena receive medical treatment through the observation window. Sarah sat beside her sister, still in tactical gear, her hand wrapped around Elena's with careful pressure. Hayes moved between them and the medical team with efficient coordination. Managing logistics, Marcus couldn't bring himself to focus on. His mind kept circling back to that corridor, Reed's final transmission, the silence that followed. Davis approached with a medical tablet, his young face etched with exhaustion and grief. Sir, preliminary examination confirms what we suspected. Elena was subjected to repeated forced heats over 6 years, evidence of pharmaceutical intervention, physical trauma, psychological conditioning. She'll need extensive rehabilitation. Marcus absorbed this clinical description of torture with the kind of rage that burned cold rather than hot. What's her prognosis? The medic chose his words carefully. Physically, she'll recover with time and proper care. Psychologically, he left it hanging because they both understood. Some wounds never fully healed. Cooper materialized at Marcus's other shoulder, still wearing his tactical blacks, despite the mission's conclusion. The older man's weathered face showed the strain of losing Reed they'd served together since Panama longer even than Marcus had known him. Extraction team recovered Reed's body. He's coming home. Marcus nodded once, throat too tight for speech. At least Reed would rest at that memorial wall with the other fallen. At least there would be a grau to visit. Hayes appeared with a secure tablet. Sir, we've got movement. Victor Cross evacuated the compound 3 hours after our extraction. Current whereabouts unknown, but satellite imagery shows convoy activity heading east into Montana. The tactical implications cut through Marcus's grief with cold clarity. He's not retreating. He's repositioning. Hayes pulled up satellite feeds showing multiple convoy routes converging toward the Idaho-Montana border. Intelligence suggests rendezvous with other traditionalist forces. Sir, I think they're accelerating their timeline. Marcus studied the patterns with 20 years of strategic experience. He knows we have Elena, knows we extracted a true Omega from his facility. He's moving before we can leverage that intelligence. Cooper leaned closer to the screen. Those convoy positions put them within striking distance of Portland Pack territory by tomorrow night. The pieces assembled into a picture Marcus didn't want to see. He's going to hit someone, make a statement, show the other packs he's serious. Hayes's fingers flew across the tablet, pulling up defensive positions and force readiness reports. Portland Pack has 200 fighters. If Victor brings his full force, Marcus cut her off. Get me Alpha Patricia on secure comms, now. The call connected within 90 seconds. Alpha Patricia's face filled the screen, her dark features creased with concern. Marcus, I heard about your operation. My condolences about Colonel Reed. He pushed past the sympathy because grief was a luxury and time was short. Patricia Victor Cross is moving forces toward your territory. Best estimate puts hostile contact within 24 to 36 hours. What's your defensive posture? Her expression hardened into tactical calculation. 200 fighters, but half are scattered across the territory on routine patrols. I can consolidate in 12 hours, maybe less, if I pull everyone in hot. Marcus made the decision without consulting his counsel because some calls required immediate action. Do it. Pull everyone to your central compound. I'm sending reinforcements, 100 fighters under Sergeant Cooper's command. They'll be wheels up in 2 hours. Patricia's relief showed despite her attempt at professional composure. Thank you. We won't forget this. The call ended. Marcus turned to find his surviving team watching him with expressions that mixed grief and determination. Holt's jaw was set in angry lines. Chen remained motionless, but his eyes burned. Davis looked like he wanted to hit something. Cooper simply waited for orders with the patience of a career soldier who understood that action was the only antidote to loss. Marcus's voice carried the weight of command and personal conviction. We lost Reed buying those women their freedom. Victor's about to learn that cost him more than one man. Cooper, you have operational command of the reinforcement unit. Holt, Chen, Davis, you're going with him. Hayes coordinates from here. I want Portland locked down tighter than a military installation. Cooper straightened. Sir, you should be here coordinating overall strategy, Marcus interrupted with flat finality. I'm going to Denver. Every Alpha in the Northwest needs to understand what's coming and choose sides before Victor forces the choice on them. This ends with either unified opposition or civil war. I'd prefer the former. The team dispersed to their assignments with practiced efficiency. Marcus found himself alone in the operations center, staring at tactical displays that painted the coming conflict in red markers and probability percentages. 20 years of keeping peace about to shatter because one Alpha couldn't accept that the world had changed. Sarah entered without knocking, still wearing her tactical gear, but moving with the kind of exhaustion that went beyond physical. She stopped beside him, studying the same displays with eyes trained to read strategic situations. Her words came quiet but certain. "You're blaming yourself for Reed." Marcus didn't bother denying it. "I'm the Alpha King. Everyone who dies under my command is my responsibility." Sarah turned to face him fully. "Reed was dying anyway. Cancer, right? I saw how he moved, how he favored his left side. Recognized the signs from watching my mother waste away." The observation cut close to truths Marcus hadn't wanted to examine. "He told me on the tarmac, 6 months." A long silence, heavy with implications neither of them wanted to voice. Sarah broke it first. "Then he chose his death. Chose to go out fighting for something that mattered, rather than dying by inches in a hospital bed. That's not your failure. That's his victory." Logic didn't ease the crushing weight in Marcus's chest, but it provided framework for moving forward. He'd grieve later. Right now, people needed leadership more than they needed his emotional processing. His voice came rough. "Get some rest. You've been running on adrenaline for 16 hours. Sarah didn't move. "You're going to Denver to rally the packs. I'm coming with you." Marcus started to refuse, started to point out she was an intelligence asset who needed debriefing and medical evaluation. Then he caught himself. Sarah wasn't fragile, wasn't a victim who needed protecting. She was a soldier who'd earned respect through competence, not rank. He nodded once. "Wheels up at 1400. Be ready." The flight to Denver took 3 hours through clear winter skies. Marcus used the time to review files on every Alpha who would attend the emergency summit. 20 pack leaders representing territories from Washington to the Dakotas, each with their own agendas and loyalties. Some he trusted, some he merely tolerated, some he actively opposed on policy but respected for their integrity. The question that mattered, how many would stand with him when Victor forced the choice. Sarah sat across the cabin, working through her own tablet, reviewing intelligence reports Hayes had compiled. Elena slept in the medical bay under sedation, her body finally released from years of hypervigilance. The contrast between sisters struck Marcus, one broken by captivity, the other hardened by survival. Both true Omegas, but shaped by radically different responses to the same threat. Sarah looked up, catching him watching. "You're wondering if I'll crack like Elena did." Marcus chose honesty over diplomacy. "I'm wondering how anyone survives 8 years of hiding without losing themselves." Her smile carried bitter wisdom. "You don't survive it. You become someone else. The person I was at 24 wouldn't recognize who I am now. But that person wouldn't have survived Victor's world either, so maybe the trade was worth it." The philosophy resonated with Marcus's own experience. 20 years of command had carved away the idealistic young Alpha who'd believed in simple solutions. What remained was harder, more pragmatic, capable of making choices that would have horrified his younger self. He voiced the question that had been circling his mind since the extraction. "Your suppressants are failing. Medical says 6 months before complete organs shut down. What happens when you can't hide anymore?" Sarah set down her tablet with deliberate care. "Then I stop hiding. I'm done running, Commander. Done pretending to be something I'm not. If Victor wants true Bard Omegas, let him come for me. But he'll find a soldier, not a victim." The steel in her voice reminded Marcus why he'd approved her recruitment 8 years ago. Intelligence work required more than just information. Gathering it required the kind of courage that kept moving forward when every instinct screamed retreat. Denver's skyline appeared through cloud cover at 1645. The neutral territory housed the Western Conference facility, a sprawling complex that served as meeting ground for interpact negotiations. Marcus had spent more time in these conference rooms than he cared to calculate, hammering out treaties and preventing conflicts. Today felt different. Today felt like the negotiations might fail and war would follow. The main conference hall occupied the central building's top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Rocky Mountains' granite peaks, still snow-capped despite early spring. 20 Alphas occupied seats around the massive table, faces Marcus knew, respected, occasionally opposed. The age range spanned from 35 to 70, representing different generations and philosophies of pack leadership. Alpha Gerald from Boise sat near the head of the table, 58 years old, and carrying the weight of surviving the 1975 Civil War. His scarred hands told stories of combat Marcus had only read about in historical reports. Beside him, Alpha Patricia from Portland showed visible strain from the threat assessment Marcus had delivered hours earlier. Younger alphas filled the remaining seats, leaders who'd come to power during Marcus's reign, who'd never known anything but the progressive structure he'd built. Marcus took his seat at the table's head. Sarah remained standing by the wall, officially present as intelligence consultant, but unofficially there as living evidence of what they were fighting to protect. His opening carried the weight of crisis. Victor Cross has declared war on everything we've built. He's mobilizing 15 traditionalist packs with the explicit goal of overthrowing progressive government and returning to pre-1975 power structures. That includes treating true Omegas as combat assets. Alpha Gerald's response came immediate and challenging. You extracted one of his prisoners, conducted a military operation on his territory without council approval. Some would say you started this war. Marcus met his gaze without flinching. He was torturing a woman for 6 years, using her biology as a weapon. I ended that. If that's an act of war, I'll own it. Alpha Robert from Wyoming 43, and pragmatic to his core, leaned forward. What's the strategic picture numbers capabilities timeline? Hayes stepped forward with her tablet projecting force assessments onto the room's main display. Victor's coalition represents 600 trained fighters. Our analysis suggests combat enhancement through true Omega pheromones, increasing effective strength by 200 to 300% during operations. Without matching capability, our conventional forces are outmatched 3 to 1. The room erupted in overlapping arguments. Some alphas demanded immediate military response. Others called for diplomatic solutions. A few, Marcus noted with alarm, stayed silent, calculating rather than reacting. Those were the ones he worried about most. Alpha Thomas from Idaho 62, and increasingly sympathetic to traditionalist philosophy, voiced what others were thinking. If Victor's enhanced forces are that effective, and we refuse to match the capability we're fighting with deliberate handicap, that's not strategy, that's suicide. Marcus stood, letting command presence silence the room. We banned true Omega exploitation in 1952 for reasons that remain valid. Using people as weapons makes us no different from what we fought to stop. I won't become Victor Cross to defeat Victor Cross. Gerald's voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen this argument play out before. Noble sentiment, but nobility doesn't win wars. Victor's playing to win. We're playing to maintain principles. Guess which approach history favors? The philosophical debate threatened to spiral into chaos. Marcus needed to redirect focus toward actionable intelligence rather than abstract ethics. Victor's forces are moving toward Portland, estimated contact within 24 hours. I've sent reinforcements, but this is just the opening move. He's testing our response time and unity. The real question is when he hits Portland, do we respond together or individually? Alpha Michael from Oregon 38, and progressive to his core, stood with visible anger. Portland Pack has been our ally for 3 decades. If we don't defend them, what message does that send? Thomas countered immediately. That we're not willing to commit to someone else's fight. Portland's territory, Portland's problem. Marcus watched the room divide along predictable lines. Younger alphas supported immediate unified response. Older alphas counseled caution and measured action. The middle ground, the 8 alphas who could swing either direction, remained carefully neutral, waiting to see which way momentum moved. Sarah's voice cut through the debate with unexpected authority. You're all asking the wrong question. The room fell silent. 20 alphas turned to stare at the woman who'd spoken without invitation. Marcus should have shut her down for protocol violation. Instead, he gestured for her to continue. Sarah moved to the display, pulling up intelligence Hayes had compiled. You're debating whether to defend Portland. Victor's already planning 3 moves ahead. Portland's not his real target. It's a test. He hits them, measures your response time and commitment level. If you rush to defend, he's learned your force projection capabilities. If you hesitate, he's identified weakness in your alliance structure. Either way, he's gathering intelligence for the real attack. Alpha Gerald studied her with renewed interest. And what's the real target? Sarah pulled up a map of the Western Territories. Washington, D.C. 3 weeks from now, you're all scheduled for the annual council summit. Every major alpha in one location. Victor takes that, building kills or captures leadership, the entire progressive structure collapses. The implications hit like physical blows. Marcus felt his strategic assessment recalibrate around this new framework. Sarah was right, Portland was misdirection. The real objective was decapitation strike against leadership. Alpha Patricia found her voice first. So we cancel the summit, refuse to gather in one vulnerable location. Sarah shook her head. That's what he wants. You cancel, you're admitting fear, admitting his tactics work. You show weakness, more packs defect to his side. Within 6 months, he's picked apart your alliance through strategic pressure without firing another shot. Thomas leaned back with grudging respect. So we're damned if we defend Portland, damned if we don't, and damned if we cancel the summit. Excellent tactical position. Marcus reclaimed control of the briefing. Sarah's intelligence background gives her perspective we need. The solution isn't avoiding Victor's traps, it's turning them against him. We defend Portland with measured response that doesn't expose our full capabilities. We maintain the DC summit, but with security protocols that turn it into a trap for anyone who attacks. And we go on offense, hitting his supply lines and recruitment efforts while he's focused on conventional operations. The strategy unfolded with the clarity of good planning meeting actual intelligence. Marcus watched the room's atmosphere shift from defensive panic to calculated aggression. This was what leadership required, taking chaos and giving it structure, turning fear into purposeful action. Alpha Michael voiced the question everyone was considering. You mentioned going on offense. What exactly does that mean? Marcus pulled up satellite imagery of traditionalist territory. Victor's coalition depends on centralized command structure. He coordinates everything, personally doesn't trust his subordinates enough to delegate. We hit his command centers, disrupt communications, force him to react rather than act. Make him fight in our war, not his. Holt's report from the morning provided critical intelligence. We identified 3 key facilities during yesterday's operation. Communications hub in eastern Idaho, supply depot in Montana, and training facility near the Canadian border. Take those out, Victor's coordination collapses. The planning continued for another 2 hours, hammering out details of defensive postures, offensive operations, and contingency plans for every scenario they could imagine. By 1800 hours, Marcus had commitments from 16 alphas for immediate military cooperation. 4 remained neutral, claiming they needed time to consult their territories. Those 4 bothered him more than Victor's entire army. The summit broke for dinner. Marcus found himself at the window watching sunset paint the mountains in orange and purple. Sarah appeared beside him with 2 glasses of whiskey, offering one without comment. He accepted, appreciating the gesture. You took a risk, speaking up without invitation. Sarah sipped her drink. Seemed like you needed someone to cut through the political posturing and focus on actual tactics. Marcus smiled despite the day's wait. 8 years in intelligence taught you to read rooms better than most career politicians. They stood in companionable silence, watching darkness claim the mountains. Reed would have enjoyed this view, would have made some comment about mountains being easier to manage than alphas. The phantom ache of his absence sat heavy in Marcus's chest. Sarah's voice came quiet. You're thinking about Colonel Reed. Marcus didn't deny it. 20 years of running operations together. I keep expecting him to appear with tactical suggestions or dark humor about our situation. The silence is... He trailed off because words failed to capture the specific emptiness of losing someone who'd been constant presence for 2 decades. Sarah's hand found his shoulder with surprising gentleness. The people we lose don't leave us. They become part of how we think, how we act, how we lead. Reed's still with you, just in different form. The philosophy provided small comfort, but Marcus accepted that grief had no timeline, no convenient resolution. He'd carry Reed's absence like he carried the weight of every other fallen soldier as a reminder of what was at stake and why the fight mattered. His phone buzzed with the incoming transmission. Hayes's voice carried urgent tension. Sir, Portland's under attack. Victor hit them 30 minutes ago with overwhelming force. They need help now. Marcus was moving before conscious thought could intervene. Cooper status. The sergeant's response came punctuated by weapons fire. We're engaged. Enemy force approximately 200 fighters. Their enhanced strength, speed, aggression all elevated. Sir, they're not just fighting, they're slaughtering. Marcus reached the operations center at dead run, Sarah matching his pace. The tactical displays showed Portland compounds surrounded by red hostile markers. Cooper's defensive positions formed a contracting perimeter as overwhelming numbers pressed from all sides. Casualty reports scrolled past 15 friendly killed in the first 10 minutes of contact. Alpha Patricia's face appeared on screen, blood running from a cut above her eye. Marcus, they're killing civilians. Women, children, non-combatants. This isn't combat. This is genocide. The word hit with crushing accuracy. Victor wasn't just attacking military targets. He was making a statement written in innocent blood. Marcus made decisions with the cold clarity of someone who'd commanded through 3 wars. All available forces converge on Portland. I want air support, ground reinforcements, every asset we can deploy in the next 60 minutes. And get me a direct channel to Victor Cross. Hayes worked her board with frantic efficiency. Sir, direct communication might be compromised. Marcus cut her off. I don't care. Open a channel on every frequency Victor monitors. I want him to hear this. The channel opened with burst of static. Marcus didn't wait for confirmation of receipt. Victor Cross, this is AlphaKing Marcus Kane. You want war. You have it. But touch another civilian and I will personally ensure you die screaming. This is your only warning. He cut the transmission before Victor could respond. Sarah stood beside him, her expression unreadable. You just declared war before Congress approved military action. Marcus met her gaze without apology. I declared war the moment Victor started killing children. Congress can ratify it later. The operations center exploded into controlled chaos. Hayes coordinated air support. Holt organized ground assault teams. Chen deployed with sniper units to provide long-range support. Every resource Marcus commanded flowed toward Portland with single-minded purpose. But even moving at maximum speed, reinforcements wouldn't arrive for 90 minutes. Cooper and his team were alone, outnumbered, fighting a delaying action against enhanced forces that showed no mercy. Marcus watched the tactical display with helpless fury. This was command's worst nightmare, sending people to day and being unable to change the outcome, only observe it. The casualty count climbed 23, 31, 47. Each number represented someone who trusted him to lead them well. Cooper's voice came over comms, calm, despite audible combat in the background. Sir, we're not going to hold. Enemies pushing into the compound. Civilians are scattered across the complex. We need extraction for non-combatants. Marcus checked distances, response times, and came up with impossible math. Extraction birds are 40 minutes out. A long pause, weapons fire, screaming. Cooper's response came steady despite the chaos. Then we buy 40 minutes. The channel went to tactical traffic, short, sharp commands between Cooper and his team as they organized falling back defense, using every trick accumulated over decades of combat experience. Marcus listened with clenched fists, unable to do anything except bear witness. Sarah touched his arm. There's another option. He turned to find her watching the display with calculating intensity. If Victor's forces are enhanced through true Omega pheromones, and I'm a true Omega without suppressants, my scent could affect the battlefield. Marcus understood immediately and rejected it just as fast. No, absolutely not. Sarah's voice remained clinically calm. My scent would enhance friendly forces while disrupting enemy coordination. Their fighters are artificially enhanced, addicted to pheromone exposure. Sudden flood of natural source would overwhelm their systems, make them irrational and aggressive toward each other, rather than focused on objectives. The tactical logic was sound. It was also completely unacceptable. You'd be painting a target on yourself. Every enhanced fighter would converge on your position. Sarah met his objections with unflinching resolve. Then use me as bait. Draw them to a kill zone where you can eliminate them efficiently. I'm a soldier commander. Let me do my job. Marcus wanted to refuse, wanted to find any other solution that didn't involve using Sarah as weapon and target simultaneously. But the casualty count kept climbing 53, 59, 64, and Cooper's team couldn't hold much longer without intervention. He made the call that would haunt him regardless of outcome. Hayes prep a helicopter. Sarah's flying to Portland with minimal security detail. She maintains position on the compound's north ridge upwind of enemy forces. The moment her scent hits their lines, our forces execute tactical withdrawal to secondary positions. We let Victor's enhanced fighters converge on her location, then hit them with everything we have. Sarah nodded once, already moving toward the helicopter bay. Marcus caught her arm. This is voluntary. You can refuse. Her smile carried grim certainty. I've been hiding 8 years, running from what I am. Time to make it count for something. She was gone before Marcus could find words adequate to the moment. He returned to the tactical display, watching Cooper's perimeter contract further. 67 casualties. 71. The numbers climbed with relentless inevitability. Hayes pulled up Sarah's helicopter track. 15 minutes to Portland airspace. Marcus keyed into Cooper's channel. Sergeant help is coming. You just need to hold 10 more minutes. Cooper's response came labored. Copy. We'll be here. The next 10 minutes lasted lifetimes. Marcus watched the tactical display with absolute focus, tracking friendly positions and enemy movements. Victor's forces pressed relentlessly, overwhelming defensive positions through sheer numerical superiority and enhanced capabilities. Cooper's team fought with desperate skill, but skill only delayed the inevitable against impossible odds. Sarah's helicopter appeared on tracking at 9 minutes 40 seconds. Marcus watched its icon move into position on the compound's northern ridge. Hayes confirmed placement over comms. Asset in position, awaiting your order. Marcus took one breath, two, then execute. Sarah's true Omega scent flooded the battlefield, invisible but undeniable. Marcus couldn't sense it through the tactical feeds, but he saw its effect immediately. Enemy forces hesitated mid-assault, their enhanced senses overwhelmed by pheromone source orders of magnitude stronger than anything they'd experienced. Training collapsed. Discipline evaporated. Enhanced fighters turned from organized assault force into mob of individuals fighting to reach Sarah's position. Cooper's voice carried surprise relief. They're breaking off enemies abandoning assault and moving north. Marcus watched red hostile markers converge on Sarah's position with terrifying speed. 200 enhanced fighters, all rational thought burned away by artificially heightened response to true Omega pheromones. Sarah stood alone on that ridge with 3 security personnel against an army. He keyed the strike command. All units execute kill zone protocol. Fire at will. Artillery opened up first precise strikes on the converging enemy formations. Helicopter gunships swept in from multiple vectors, cannons tearing into packed targets. Sniper teams activated, dropping high-value targets with clinical precision. The kill zone Marcus had designed turned into mechanized slaughter, catching Victor's forces in crossfire with nowhere to retreat. The battle lasted 7 minutes of concentrated violence. When the guns fell silent, 194 enemy fighters lay dead or dying. 6 had escaped into the wilderness. Cooper's defensive positions held with 83 friendly casualties, devastating losses, but survivable. Sarah remained standing on the ridge, surrounded by bodies of enemies who'd gotten too close before the kill zone eliminated them. Her security detail reported her unharmed but shaken. Marcus allowed himself one moment of relief before returning to command responsibilities. Secure the compound. Medical teams prioritize civilian casualties. I want prisoner interrogation started within the hour. And someone gets Sarah back here. Alpha Patricia appeared on screen, her face showing exhaustion and trauma. Marcus, they killed 70 civilians before your forces arrived. Men, women, children. Victor's people weren't trying to conquer territory. They were sending a message. Marcus absorbed this confirmation of genocide with cold fury. Message received. Now it's time to reply. The aftermath coordination took hours of exhausting work. Medical teams triaged casualties. Engineers assessed damage. Intelligence personnel interrogated captured fighters. Marcus coordinated everything from Denver's operations center while simultaneously updating the Alphas who'd attended the summit. The response split along predictable lines. Progressive Alphas expressed horror and renewed commitment to stopping Victor. The 4 neutral Alphas remained silent, calculation clear in their careful non-responses. Marcus filed that information for later action. Sarah returned at midnight exhausted and covered in other people's blood. She'd proven herself in combat, earned respect through action rather than rank. But the cost showed in her expression. Using herself as bait had worked, but it had also confirmed every fear she'd carried for 8 years. True Omegas could be weaponized. She'd just demonstrated it with lethal efficiency. Marcus found her at the operations center window, staring at her reflection in the glass. He approached carefully, respecting the space of someone processing trauma. His voice came quiet. You saved 80 lives tonight, maybe more. That matters. Sarah didn't turn. I also became exactly what I spent 8 years hiding from. A weapon, a tool, something that makes other people irrational and violent. Marcus understood the philosophical crisis because he'd lived his own version. Being capable of violence doesn't make you violent. Being able to be used as weapon doesn't make you a weapon. You made a choice, maintained agency. That's what separates you from what Victor's doing to his captive true Omegas. Sarah finally looked at him, her eyes carrying questions that had no easy answers. Where's the line? When does tactical advantage become exploitation? I volunteered tonight. What about next time or the time after? How long before voluntary becomes expected, then demanded the forced? The questions were legitimate and troubling. Marcus had no comfortable responses, only hard truths earned through 2 decades of command. The line exists where we draw it, where we refuse to cross even when tactical advantage demands it. You volunteered once. That doesn't obligate you to volunteer again. If I ever give you an order that feels like crossing that line, you refuse it. That's not insubordination. That's maintaining the principles we're fighting for. Sarah absorbed this with visible consideration. And if refusing means more people die, Marcus met her gaze without flinching. Then more people die. Because the alternative is becoming Victor Cross, and that's a cost I won't pay. The philosophy seemed to provide framework, if not comfort. Sarah nodded slowly, turning back to the window. They stood in silence, watching Denver's lights glitter against darkness, 2 soldiers processing the day's violence and preparing for tomorrow's battles. Hayes appeared with updated intelligence. Sir Victor's issued a statement. He's taking credit for Portland, calling it justice for your raid on his compound. He's also announced plans to continue operations against any pack harboring true Omegas or supporting progressive government. Marcus accepted the report without surprise. Victor was escalating exactly as predicted, using Portland's devastation as justification for broader campaign. What's our force posture? Hayes pulled up strategic assessments. 16 packs have committed military support. Combined forces approximately 2,200 fighters. Victor's coalition numbers 600, but with combat enhancement. Effective parity in most scenarios, slight disadvantage in sustained operations. The math wasn't encouraging. Victor's smaller force, enhanced through true Omega pheromones, could punch above its weight class, especially in short, brutal engagements, where raw aggression mattered more than tactical sophistication. Marcus made decisions that would shape the coming war. Double training intensity. I want every fighter in our coalition drilled on operating against enhanced opponents. Emphasize discipline over aggression, coordination over individual heroics. Victor's people fight like berserkers. We fight like soldiers. Hayes nodded, already updating training protocols. What about the DC summit 3 weeks out? Do we proceed or cancel? Marcus thought about Sarah's earlier assessment. Canceling showed fear. Proceeding invited attack. Neither option was good, but one maintained momentum while the other surrendered it. We proceed, but security gets tripled. I want the summit location turned into fortress. Anyone attacks us there, they'll regret it. The planning continued into early morning. By 0300, Marcus had established defensive positions, offensive operations, and contingency plans for scenarios ranging from limited border skirmishes to full-scale civil war. His team worked with exhausted efficiency driven by professionalism and the memory of Reed's sacrifice. Cooper appeared at 0430, still in his tactical gear, despite the hour. The sergeant's face showed the weight of losing 26 men from his command. Sir Prisoner interrogation yielded intelligence. Victor's got a command facility in northern Idaho. Coordinate security, lay out the works. Marcus studied the intelligence with predatory focus. How good is this information? Cooper's expression hardened. Prisoner was Victor's communications officer. Knows the facility inside out. He's willing to trade information for clemency. A command center. If they could take it out, Victor's coordination would collapse. But the information came too easily, too conveniently. Marcus's instincts screamed trap. Sarah voiced his concerns. Victor lets his communications officer get captured with perfect intelligence on his command center. Either he's incompetent or this is bait. Cooper nodded agreement. That's my read too. But sir, if there's even a chance this intelligence is genuine, we can't ignore it. Taking out Victor's coordination could end this war before it really starts. Marcus weighed options with the burden of command. Ignore the intelligence and possibly miss critical opportunity. Act on it and potentially walk into ambush. Both paths carried risk. Both demanded decision. His voice came flat with resolved certainty. We're going, but we're going prepared for trap. I want full tactical team, heavy weapon support, and backup plans for every scenario. If this is genuine intelligence, we exploit it. If it's bait, we turn it against Victor. Hayes pulled up mission planning protocols. Sir, with respect, you don't need to personally lead every operation. Cooper's fully capable. Marcus cut her off. Cooper's capable of running the op. I'm going because if this is trap, I want to be there when it springs. Victor's trying to draw me out. Fine. Let him try. The mission prep consumed the next 18 hours. Marcus assembled his best operators, Chen Holt Davis from the original Portland team, plus Cooper and 15 additional fighters. Sarah insisted on joining over Marcus's objections, her argument simple and irrefutable. If Victor was baiting trap with true Omega intelligence, having an actual true Omega on the team provided tactical options. They deployed at 2200 hours helicopter insertion to the Idaho wilderness. The target facility sat in a valley surrounded by dense forest satellite imagery, showing minimal security presence. Everything about it screamed trap, which meant they approached with maximum caution and minimum expectations. The team moved through darkness with practiced silence. Chen took overwatch position on the ridgeline. Holt prepared breaching charges. Davis positioned his medical station at the fallback point. Cooper coordinated team movements with efficient hand signals. Marcus studied the facility through night vision. 2 guards visible at the main entrance. Thermal imaging showed maybe 6 additional signatures inside. The numbers were wrong, too few for command center, too many for abandoned facility. Sarah crouched beside him, her enhanced senses providing information technology couldn't. I smell wolf's bane and silver, military-grade quantities. This isn't a trap for normal wolves. Marcus processed that intelligence with growing certainty. Wolf's bane and silver meant anti-werewolf weapons. Victor wasn't just setting ambush. He was setting one specifically designed to neutralize supernatural advantages. His hand went to his radio. All teams, this is actual. Mission is compromised. Execute fallback to extraction point. The facility exploded before anyone could move. Not one explosion, but dozens shaped charges detonating in coordinated sequence that turned the entire valley into kill zone. Trees vaporized. Ground erupted. The concussive force threw Marcus 20 feet backward, slamming him into a boulder that knocked the breath from his lungs. His vision swam. Ears rang. Training took over. Check for injuries. Locate team. Assess threats. He rolled to his feet, weapon up, searching for targets through smoke and debris. Victor Cross's voice boomed across the valley, amplified through speakers Marcus hadn't detected. Welcome, AlphaKing. I've been expecting you. Smoke choked the valley like poison. Marcus hauled himself upright, ears still ringing from the coordinated detonations that had turned their approach route into a crater-pocked wasteland. His team scattered across the blast zone, some moving, some frighteningly still. Chen's overwatch position had taken a direct hit from something heavy. The ridge collapsed into rubble. Holt lay 30 meters away, his body twisted at angles that suggested broken bones. Davis crawled toward the nearest wounded, his medical training overriding self-preservation. Cooper appeared through the smoke, blood streaming from a scalp wound, but still functional. His voice came distant and muffled through damaged hearing. Sir, we're exposed. Need to move now. Marcus counted bodies through the case. 15 operators deployed, 7 moving, 4 down but breathing, 4 not moving at all. The math hit harder than the explosion. He'd walked his people into exactly the trap Sarah had warned about. Victor's amplified voice cut through the ringing in Marcus's ears. I expected better from the legendary AlphaKing. 20 years of command, and you walk into obvious bait. Disappointing. Muzzle flashes erupted from the tree line. Automatic weapons fire tore through the valley from elevated positions Marcus's reconnaissance had completely missed. His tactical assessment recalibrated. This wasn't ambush. This was execution ground, pre-sighted and calibrated for maximum casualties. Sarah materialized beside him, her tactical vest scorched but intact. She moved with the controlled urgency of someone running on adrenaline and training. North Ridge, 50 meters. There's dead ground that'll provide cover. Marcus didn't question her assessment. Cooper fighting withdrawal to North Ridge. Wounded first, then combat effectives. Move. The team executed with desperate precision. Davis and two operators hauled Holt's broken body toward the ridge. Chen emerged from the collapsed overwatch position, limping but carrying his rifle. The four who weren't moving stayed where they'd fallen. Retrieving bodies under fire was tactical suicide. Bullets chewed the ground around Marcus's feet as he provided covering fire. His rifle barked in controlled bursts, dropping two hostiles in the tree line. Victor's forces pressed from three sides, professional in their coordination. These weren't enhanced berserkers from Portland. These were trained soldiers executing prepared ambush. The team reached the ridge's dead ground with 6 casualties left behind and 3 more wounded, badly enough to compromise mobility. Marcus's force had been cut in half within 90 seconds of engagement. This was what defeat looked like: rapid, brutal, and comprehensive. Cooper established defensive perimeter while Davis worked on Holt. The younger man's leg bent wrong, compound fracture visible through torn tactical pants. His face had gone gray with shock, but he clutched his detonator with stubborn determination. "Sir, charges are still armed. Just need line of sight to facility." Marcus processed this through combat focus. Holt had planted breaching charges before the ambush triggered. If they could get line of sight, they could still destroy whatever Victor had hidden in that facility. Small victory from comprehensive defeat, but victory nonetheless. Sarah pointed to a gap in the ridge 30 meters west. That overlooks the valley, clear line to the facility. Hostile fire intensified, bullets ricocheting off rocks with angry whines. Victor's forces had pinned them in dead ground, but couldn't advance without exposing themselves to defensive fire. Tactical stalemate, except Marcus's team was bleeding out while Victor's could afford to wait for reinforcements. His mind raced through options and came up empty. They couldn't extract without exposing themselves to killing fire. Couldn't hold position indefinitely with wounded who needed immediate medical attention. Couldn't advance against superior numbers in prepared positions. Every tactical choice led to more casualties. Sarah's voice cut through his analysis. "Give me 5 minutes with clear line of sight to Victor's positions." Marcus understood immediately and rejected it just as fast. "No, we're not using you as bait again." Her expression hardened with resolve that transcended fear. "It's not bait if it's voluntary. I'm a soldier choosing tactical option that saves lives. That's what soldiers do." Cooper caught the exchange, and his tactical mind reached the same conclusion Marcus had. Her scent would affect every hostile in range. Make them irrational, break their discipline. We could use the chaos to extract. The logic was sound. It was also asking Sarah to weaponize herself again, confirming every fear she'd expressed about becoming a tool rather than a person. Marcus met her eyes, searching for doubt or hesitation. Found only grim certainty. His voice came rough. "This is your choice. No orders. No expectations. Pure voluntary." Sarah nodded once. "Then I choose to fight." She moved to the gap in the ridge with Marcus and Chen providing cover. The moment she exposed herself to open air, her scent flooded the valley. Marcus couldn't sense it directly, but he saw the effect ripple through Victor's positions like shockwave. Disciplined fire faltered. Coordinated assault dissolved into individual movements. Trained soldiers became competing animals, each trying to reach the source of overwhelming pheromones. Chen's rifle sang, dropping hostiles who broke cover in irrational charges. Marcus fired with mechanical precision, his targets presenting themselves through their own loss of control. The defensive perimeter held against disorganized attacks that would have overwhelmed them if Victor's forces had maintained tactical cohesion. Holt triggered his charges from the dead ground. The facility erupted in secondary explosions that suggested something volatile had been stored inside. Fire bloomed orange against the night sky, casting writhing shadows across the valley. Whatever Victor had hidden there was gone now, destroyed by the very bait he'd set. The explosions provided cover for extraction. Cooper organized withdrawal with practiced efficiency. Wounded moved first under covering fire from combat effectives. Sarah maintained position at the gap, her presence keeping Victor's forces irrational and disorganized. Marcus stayed with her, refusing to leave her exposed while his team withdrew. Helicopter gunships appeared over the northern ridge, Hayes's voice crackling over comms with blessed familiarity. Actual, this is Overwatch. We have your position. Extraction birds inbound. 60 seconds. The helicopter swept in with guns blazing, suppressing fire that bought precious seconds. Marcus grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her from the gap as bullets chewed the rock where she'd been standing. They ran for the landing zone, the last two out, while gunships provided cover. The ride back to Seattle passed in exhausted silence. Marcus did final count: 6 dead, 4 wounded, seriously 3 more with injuries that would require weeks of recovery. 13 casualties from 15 operators, 75% casualty rate. The numbers made him sick. Chen sat across from him, cleaning his rifle with automatic motions, despite the blood running from a graze across his shoulder. Holt lay sedated, Davis monitoring his vitals with professional concern. Cooper stared at nothing, his expression carrying the weight of surviving when others hadn't. Sarah met Marcus's eyes with understanding that needed no words. They'd both made choices tonight. Both carried responsibility for the dead. Both would process that burden in private later when operational security allowed grief. Hayes met them on the tarmac at 0400, her expression confirming she'd monitored everything through tactical feeds. Sir Prisoner interrogation from Portland yielded additional intelligence. The communications officer who gave up the facility location, he was telling the truth. Victor sacrificed real operational asset to bait you into that ambush. Marcus processed this through exhaustion and trauma. He gave up actual command center just to kill me. Hayes pulled up interrogation transcripts on her tablet. Not just to kill you, to prove a point. That intelligence officer broke under enhanced interrogation before we could stop it. Before dying, he revealed something bigger. Victor's not the leader. He's a field commander, taking orders from someone else. The implications crashed through Marcus's fatigue like cold water. Everything they'd assumed about power structure was wrong. Victor wasn't the mastermind. He was the weapon. Someone else was pulling strings. His voice came flat. Who? Hayes's expression carried dread. He called them the Old Council. 12 werewolves ages 70 to 90 plus. Former pack leaders who officially retired after the 1975 war, but apparently never stopped coordinating. They've spent 50 years planning return to traditional power structure. Victor's just their latest tool. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his strategic understanding. Fighting Victor was complicated enough. Fighting 12 elder alphas with 50 years of planning and resources was exponentially worse. Where are they? Hayes pulled up satellite imagery of extreme northern territory. Alaska, isolated compound completely off-grid. The dying officer only knew location because he'd been there once for briefing. Sir, these people have been running shadow government for half a century. We're not fighting insurgency. We're fighting organized conspiracy with deeper roots than our entire progressive structure. The scope of the problem crystallized with terrible clarity. Stopping Victor wouldn't end this. Defeating his field operations would just prompt the Old Council to raise another champion. This war wouldn't finish until they cut out the real cancer. Sarah voiced what Marcus was thinking. We need to go to Alaska. End this at the source. Cooper shook his head with tactical pragmatism. We just got massacred in Idaho. Our forces are depleted, wounded, exhausted. Victor's still active with 600 fighters. We can't open another front. Marcus studied the intelligence with commander's eye for strategic priority. We don't open another front. We change theaters. Victor's forces are concentrated in the Northwest preparing for the DC Summit attack. While he's focused on that operation, we hit Alaska with small team. Decapitation strike on actual leadership. Hayes pulled up force assessments and logistics. Small team against fortified compound defended by the 12 most experienced alphas alive, sir. That's suicide. Marcus met her concern with flat certainty. So was Portland until we turned it around. So was the Idaho ambush until we adapted. This war doesn't end with conventional tactics. It ends when we take risks Victor's generation can't anticipate. The planning continued through dawn. By 0800, Marcus had framework for two-phase operation, maintained defensive posture in Northwest, while executing surgical strike in Alaska. Resources spread thin, forces divided everything depending on speed and surprise. Alpha Patricia called at 0900, her face still showing trauma from Portland. Marcus, I need you to see something. Evidence our forensics team recovered from the dead. The video file she transmitted showed interrogation footage taken from a deceased enemy's helmet camera. The victim, a young Omega female, maybe 20 years old, had been enhanced forcibly, her body pumped full of pheromone amplifiers that turned her biology into weapon without consent. The process had killed her within 48 hours, her organs shut down from chemical overload. Patricia's voice carried rage and horror. We found 3 more like her. Victor's not just using true Omegas. He's manufacturing synthetic versions through pharmaceutical enhancement, burning through victims in days. Sir, this is industrialized exploitation. Marcus watched the footage with growing fury. This wasn't war. This was systematic abuse turned into tactical doctrine. Every principle he'd spent 20 years defending violated with clinical efficiency. Sarah stood beside him, her face carved from stone. He's doing to them what he did to Elena, what he would have done to me if he'd caught me. This is what happens when true Omegas become strategic assets instead of people. Marcus made a decision that would define the rest of the war. We're moving the Alaska operation up, 48 hours. I want the old council eliminated before they can produce more victims. Hayes started to protest the compressed timeline. Marcus silenced her with command authority that permitted no debate. This is not a discussion. We're ending this. Now. The 48 hours passed in frantic preparation. Marcus assembled a strike team from surviving operators and volunteers from allied packs. Chen, despite his injuries, insisted on joining. Cooper volunteered without hesitation. Sarah's inclusion was non-negotiable. She'd earned her place through competence and sacrifice. Elena emerged from medical care with surprising requests to join the mission. Marcus initially refused, but her argument proved compelling. She'd survived 6 years of Victor's captivity by learning his methods, his thinking, his tactics. That knowledge made her intelligence asset more valuable than another rifle. The team departed Seattle at midnight, flying north through Canadian airspace under diplomatic cover that wouldn't survive scrutiny, but might buy time. Alaska's wilderness opened beneath them, endless forests and mountain ranges that had hidden the old council for 50 years. The compound sat in a valley accessible only by air or week-long hike through hostile terrain. Satellite imagery showed security that would make a military base envious, concentric defensive rings, overlapping fields of fire sensor networks that detected approach long before visual range. 12 elder alphas had spent 50 years fortifying this position. Marcus studied the defenses with professional respect and absolute determination. We're not going in quiet. No infiltration, no stealth approach. We hit them head-on at dawn when they're least expecting frontal assault. Cooper raised tactical concerns. Sir, that compound has 200 security personnel. We are 15 operators. Marcus's smile carried predatory certainty. That's why we're bringing friends. The friends materialized from the northern forest at 0530 200 rogue wolves led by a silver-haired woman Marcus hadn't expected to see again. Elena stood beside Sarah on the helicopter's ramp, her face transforming with shock and joy. The silver-haired woman raised one hand in greeting, her voice carrying across the distance with alpha authority Marcus recognized immediately. Commander Kane, my sister tells me you're killing people who deserve it. Room for a few more. Elena's whisper came awed. That's Thalia. She's not just surviving, she's leading. Sarah's older sister had spent 2 years in the wilderness after escaping Victor's compound. Apparently, she'd spent that time building an army of outcast rogues and survivors who'd been failed by traditional pack structure. 200 fighters loyal to someone who'd suffered everything the old council's philosophy had created. Marcus made rapid tactical recalculation. 15 operators plus 200 rogues changed the math considerably. Can your people fight? Thalia's smile showed teeth. We've been waiting 50 years for this. Just point us at the old bastards and get clear. The assault began at 0600 with artillery barrage that announced their presence with prejudice. Shaped charges blew gaps in the outer defensive ring. Thalia's rogues poured through with the fury of victims finally granted vengeance. Marcus's team moved in precision formation objectives. Clear reach the central facility, capture or kill the old council, end this war at its source. The compound's defenders fought with professional skill that came from decades of military experience. But they were defending static positions against assault force that didn't care about casualties led by a woman who'd been tortured by the system these men protected. Thalia's rogues fought like the berserkers Victor had tried to create artificially, not because of chemical enhancement, but because of earned rage. Marcus and his team reached the central building after 30 minutes of sustained combat. The structure was bunker-style, reinforced concrete and steel designed to withstand conventional assault. Holt Mobile, despite his injuries, placed breaching charges with practiced expertise. "Sir, this is military-grade fortification. Gonna need serious ordnance." Chen pointed to the roof access. "Ventilation system. Old building means old infrastructure. We can access through environmental controls." The team scaled the building under covering fire from Thalia's forces. Chen led the way into ventilation shaft with Chen's typical disregard for personal safety and absolute faith in technical knowledge. They dropped into the facility's central chamber 12 minutes after initial breach. 12 alphas waited in the chamber, men aged 70 to 90, their faces carrying the weight of decades and the certainty of people who'd never expected to face consequences. The eldest stood at the chamber's center, his hair white and his posture bent, but his eyes sharp with intelligence that age hadn't diminished. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to obedience. "Commander Kane, we've been monitoring your approach. Impressive tactics for someone operating on dated intelligence." Marcus kept his weapon trained on the speaker. "General Thorne, retired 76 after the Civil War, officially dead as of 82. I studied your campaigns and officer training. You taught me tactics I still use." Thorne's slight smile acknowledged the compliment. "And now you use those tactics against me. Appropriate, I suppose." The student challenging the master. Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. "You're under arrest for war crimes, conspiracy, and mass murder. Surrender now and you'll face trial. Resist and you'll die here." The 12 alphas laughed genuine amusement from men who'd orchestrated 50 years of shadow government. Thorne's voice carried condescending patience. "You think we're afraid of death? We're all dying anyway, boy. Cancer, heart disease, time itself. We have nothing to lose and everything to gain by making you kill us. Martyrs are more powerful than prisoners." The tactical trap crystallized. Kill them, create martyrs for traditionalist movement. Capture them, give platform for their philosophy during trial. Either outcome served their purposes better than leaving them alive and hidden. Sarah stepped forward, weapon lowered, her voice cutting through the standoff. "You're right. Killing you makes martyrs. Capturing you gives you audience. So we do neither." Thorne's expression shifted to curiosity. "Then what exactly do you propose?" Sarah pulled out a small device Marcus recognized as military-grade recording equipment. "You spent 50 years hiding, operating in shadows, building conspiracy. That power dies the moment you are exposed. So we're not going to kill you. We're not going to arrest you. We're going to make you irrelevant." She activated the device, camera light flashing red. 12 men, average age 82, hiding in Alaska because they couldn't accept the world changed. Not masterminds, not architects of grand strategy, just old men scared of irrelevance trying to burn down progress because it left them behind. History won't remember you as heroes or martyrs. It'll remember you as what you are: obsolete. The insult hit harder than bullets. Thorne's face purpled with rage. The other council members bristled with fury. Sarah had found the one attack they couldn't defend against dismissal. Not opposition, not martyrdom, just irrelevance. Marcus understood her strategy immediately and committed to it. "General Thorne, you're not under arrest. You're not under threat. You're just done. Go back to hiding in Alaska. Wait for death. The world will keep moving without you." Thorne lunged with surprising speed for his age-drawing weapon that materialized from concealment. Marcus fired twice center mass professional placement that dropped the general without hesitation. The other council members froze, calculation clear in their expressions. Die here as forgotten footnotes or live in humiliation. 8 surrendered. 3 died fighting. The combat lasted 90 seconds and ended the old council's 50-year shadow government with clinical finality. The cleanup took hours. Thalia's forces secured the compound, discovering evidence of decades of coordination, funding, and planning. Communication records showed connections to traditional pack across 3 continents. Financial documents revealed billions in hidden assets. The scope of the conspiracy dwarfed anything Marcus had imagined. Thalia found him in the command center reviewing documents with growing dread. This goes deeper than just supernatural politics. They've been influencing human governments, corporate structures, media organizations. Your old council wasn't just trying to restore traditional pack governance. They were trying to control human civilization through supernatural proxy. Marcus absorbed this with exhausted certainty that the war he thought he was fighting had been a smaller piece of something much larger. We thought we were stopping werewolf civil conflict. We just stumbled into global conspiracy. Talia's expression carried grim satisfaction. My rogues found the synthetic True Omega laboratory. Pharmaceutical equipment, human test subjects, years of research. They were trying to create artificial pheromones that would work on human populations. Imagine dictators with ability to chemically enhance their armies. Imagine corporations controlling consumer behavior through biological manipulation. The implications made Marcus's previous concerns seem almost quaint. Victor's war had been distraction. Portland had been misdirection. The real objective had always been bigger, weaponizing True Omega biology for use against humanity itself. Sarah appeared with captured research documents, her face showing horror. They've been testing on human civilians for 5 years, thousands of subjects. Most died. Some survived with permanent neurological damage. They were trying to create super soldiers that could be deployed in conventional human warfare. Marcus made rapid decision. We burn it. All of it. Research equipment records. This knowledge is too dangerous to exist. Cooper raised practical concerns. Sir, evidence of human experimentation could bring international law enforcement. Marcus cut him off, which reveals supernatural community to human governments who'll respond with fear and weapons. We can't let this become public. We handle it internally. The decision sat heavy, destroying evidence of crimes, denying justice to victims operating above human law. But the alternative was exposing werewolf existence to humanity unprepared for that revelation. Marcus chose the lesser evil and would carry the guilt. The flight back to Seattle took 10 hours through deteriorating weather. Marcus used the time to coordinate with Hayes on final preparations for the DC summit. Victor remained active with depleted but still functional forces. The summit would proceed as planned, partly because canceling showed weakness, partly because Marcus needed to address every alpha simultaneously about what they discovered in Alaska. Sarah sat beside him, processing her own reactions to the night's discoveries. They were trying to weaponize people like me, not just exploit true omegas, but recreate our biology synthetically and deploy it against humans. How do I live with that? Marcus recognized the guilt of someone learning their existence had inspired atrocity. You live by being different from what they tried to create. You're not a weapon. You're a person who happens to have capabilities others want to exploit. That's not your fault. That's theirs. Elena joined them, her presence stronger than when they'd extracted her from Idaho. Weeks of recovery combined with Thalia's return had begun healing wounds Marcus suspected would never fully close. My sister spent 2 years building an army to destroy the people who created Victor. She did that for me, for every true Omega who suffered under their system. That matters. The Seattle Operations Center bustled with activity when they arrived at 1800 hours. Hayes had assembled full tactical staff, updated threat assessments, and coordinated with allied packs across 8 territories. The DC summit would proceed in 72 hours with security protocols that turned the venue into fortress. Alpha Patricia appeared on screen, her expression showing determination that had hardened through Portland's trauma. Marcus, I've consolidated my forces and we're ready to deploy to DC. 16 other Alphas have committed security personnel. Total force 1,100 fighters protecting the summit. Victor would need an army to breach that perimeter. Marcus studied the defensive plan with professional assessment. He's got 600 enhanced fighters. Not enough for frontal assault, but enough for multiple simultaneous strikes that divide our attention. Expect him to hit soft targets while we're concentrated at the summit. Hayes pulled up Victor's last known position. Intelligence suggests he's moving east, possibly toward DC. Timeline puts him within striking distance by the summit date. Sir, he's definitely planning something. The 72 hours passed in preparation that felt like countdown to inevitable confrontation. Marcus coordinated defensive positions, reviewed security protocols, and made peace with the fact that people would die regardless of precautions. War had that certainty. Sarah spent the time training with Thalia's rogues, learning combat techniques from people who'd survived through adaptation rather than formal military structure. The two groups, Marcus's trained operators and Thalia's street fighters, found common ground and shared purpose. Elena worked with Hayes on intelligence analysis, her knowledge of Victor's thinking proving invaluable for predicting his tactics. 6 years of captivity had taught her to read her captor with uncomfortable accuracy. The team deployed to Washington, D.C. at 0600 on Summit Day. The venue, a reinforced conference facility near the Capitol, had been transformed into military installation. Concentric security perimeters overlapping fields of fire, rapid response teams positioned at strategic points, 1,100 fighters protecting 20 alphas and their staff. Marcus walked the perimeter at 0900 checking positions with commander's eye for vulnerability. Everything looked solid. Everything felt wrong. His instincts screamed that Victor had planned for exactly this defensive posture. The summit convened at 1000 hours. 20 alphas occupied the main conference chamber, their conversations subdued by the weight of recent violence. Marcus opened with the intelligence they'd recovered in Alaska, evidence of the old council, their decades of planning their experiments on human civilians, their goal of weaponizing true omega biology for global deployment. The revelations sparked heated debate. Some alphas demanded immediate disclosure to human governments. Others argued for continued secrecy. The philosophical split threatened to fracture the alliance Marcus had spent weeks building. Alpha Gerald raised the critical question. If we don't disclose to human authorities, we're complicit in covering up crimes against humanity. How is that defensible? Marcus met the challenge head-on. It's not defensible. It's necessary. We expose supernatural community to unprepared humanity. We start a war that makes our current conflict look like border skirmish. Humans outnumber us thousands to one. They have weapons that could exterminate us if they decided we were a threat. We contain this internally or we risk genocide. The argument continued for 2 hours, alphas dividing along predictable lines. Marcus felt control of the summit, slipping the alliance, fragmenting over philosophical differences that had no easy resolution. Explosion ripped through the building's east wing at 12:15. Emergency alarms blared. Security teams rushed toward the breach. Marcus grabbed his weapon and moved with practiced urgency, tactical mind already calculating attack vectors and response protocols. Victor's forces hit 3 points simultaneously: east wing breach, south perimeter, assault, and sniper fire from buildings across the street. The coordination was professional, designed to overwhelm security through multiple threats that divided response forces. Marcus coordinated defense from the command post, Hayes beside him, managing tactical displays. East wing is contained, south perimeter holding. But sir, the sniper positions are eliminating our overwatch teams. We're losing visibility. Chen's voice crackled over comms. I've got one of their snipers. Taking the shot. His rifle cracked once. Hostile fire from the northern building ceased. Chen continued hunting his skill, turning the sniper duel in their favor. But the assault intensified. Victor's enhanced fighters hit the south perimeter with berserker fury, overwhelming defensive positions through sheer aggression. Marcus watched friendly markers disappear from the tactical display with sickening regularity. 20 casualties. 30. 45. Cooper's voice came labored over comms. South perimeter is collapsing. Need reinforcements or we're breached. Marcus made the call. All reserves deploy south. Hold that line at any cost. Sarah appeared in the command post, tactical vest on and weapon ready. Marcus, Victor's using the assault as distraction. He's not trying to breach the building. He's trying to draw you out. Marcus studied the tactical display with renewed focus. Sarah was right. The assault pattern wasn't designed to penetrate defenses. It was designed to bleed them, force him to commit to reserves, create opportunities for infiltration. His voice carried over command net. All teams maintain positions. Do not pursue beyond defensive perimeter. This is bait. The warning came seconds too late. Explosion erupted from within the building inside the security cordon, past all defensive positions. Victor's forces hadn't breached from outside. They'd been inside all along. Marcus grabbed Sarah and moved toward the conference chamber at dead run. If Victor had infiltrators inside the building, the Alphas were primary targets. 20-pack leaders in one location vulnerable despite security. They reached the chamber to find Victor Cross standing over Alpha Gerald's body blood, pooling across the floor. 15 other Alphas huddled against the far wall protected by security detail that had taken heavy casualties. Victor held a detonator, his expression showing satisfaction of someone whose plan had worked perfectly. His voice carried across the chamber with measured calm. "Commander Kane, I've been waiting for you." Marcus kept his weapon trained on Victor, calculating angles and outcomes. "This is over. Your old council is destroyed. Your conspiracy is exposed. Surrender and maybe you survive trial." Victor's laugh carried genuine amusement. "Trial. You think any of this was about politics or power? This was about sending message. True Omegas are weapons. You can pretend, otherwise pass laws, reform society. But biology doesn't care about your principles. The strong dominate. The weak submit. That's nature." Sarah stepped forward, weapon lowered but stance ready. "You're wrong. I'm a true Omega, and I'm standing here by choice, fighting by choice, refusing to be your weapon by choice. That's not weakness. That's strength you'll never understand." Victor's expression shifted to something almost pitying. "You think choice matters? I've got detonator linked to explosives throughout this building. You've got 20 seconds to decide I walk out with you or everyone dies." The ultimatum hung in the air. Marcus ran calculations. Could he shoot Victor before he triggered the detonator? Could security disarm the explosives? Could they evacuate 20 Alphas in seconds? Every option ended with casualties. Elena's voice cut through the standoff from the chamber's entrance. "You really don't remember me, do you?" Victor turned his face, registering shock as Elena stepped into view. 6 years older, harder, but unmistakably the true Omega he'd held captive. Her weapon came up with steady precision. She fired 3 times before Victor could react. The detonator fell from his hand, bouncing across the floor. Marcus dove at securing it before Victor could trigger. Security personnel swarmed Victor's position, restraining him despite his enhanced strength. Elena stood over him, her expression showing 6 years of rage finally released. "You took 6 years of my life, made me your lab rat, your weapon, but I'm taking something back. Your victory, your plan, your future. You wanted to prove true Omegas were weapons. I just proved we're survivors." Victor's laughter came wet with blood from Elena's shots. "This changes nothing. More will come. The philosophy doesn't die because I failed." Marcus pulled Elena back before she could shoot again. "He's right. Killing him makes him martyr. Let him face trial. Let him spend the rest of his life in a cell knowing he failed." The cleanup took hours. Explosive disposal teams disarmed charges Victor's infiltrators had placed throughout the building. Medical personnel treated casualties, 63 wounded, 17 dead, including Alpha Gerald. The price of victory that felt like defeat. Marcus found himself in the conference chamber after midnight, alone with tactical displays showing aftermath. 20 years of building peace shattered by people who couldn't accept change. Reed's death. Portland's devastation. Tonight's casualties, all because some wolves insisted on dragging everyone back to bloodier times. Sarah appeared with coffee and quiet understanding. "You're thinking about the peace days." Marcus accepted the cup without looking away from the displays. 89 dead across this entire war. 89 names I'll add to that memorial wall. 89 people who died because I couldn't prevent this. Sarah sat beside him, her presence offering comfort without needing words. "You didn't start this war. You didn't force Victor's choices or the old council's conspiracy. You just inherited a world that needed defending and did it despite the cost. That matters. The philosophy would have to be enough because the alternative was drowning in guilt that served no purpose." Marcus turned from the displays to face her. "What you did tonight, stepping forward to confront Victor, despite the risk that took courage beyond combat training." Sarah's expression softened fractionally. "I've been running 8 years, hiding what I am afraid of becoming someone's weapon. Tonight I chose to be a soldier instead. That feels like victory, even if everything else feels like loss." The mate bond that Marcus had been suppressing for weeks pulsed between them. Recognition that transcended tactical partnership into something deeper. He had felt it during the extraction mission, during Portland, during every operation where Sarah had proven herself not just competent, but exceptional. Not despite being true Omega, but as complete person whose capabilities included, but weren't defined by biology. His voice came rough with emotion he'd been containing. The mate bond, we should talk about it. Sarah met his gaze with typical directness. We've been ignoring it because we're both afraid. You're afraid of losing someone else. I'm afraid of losing agency, becoming someone's possession rather than partner. But Marcus ignoring it doesn't make it go away. The honesty deserved matching vulnerability. I'm 42 years old. I've got 2 decades of command decisions that keep me up at night and a mortality rate that suggests I won't make retirement. You deserve someone who isn't carrying this much damage. Sarah's smile carried gentle challenge. And I'm 32 years old with 8 years of intelligence work that taught me everyone carries damage. Question isn't whether we're broken, it's whether broken pieces fit together. Whether partnership makes us stronger than we'd be alone. Marcus considered this, weighing vulnerability against tactical advantage, emotional risk against potential strength. The mate bond wasn't just biological imperative, it was recognition of equals who chose each other, despite circumstances that made the choice complicated. He reached out his hand, finding hers. If we do this, we do it as partners. Not AlphaKing and true Omega. Not commander and asset. Two soldiers who choose each other. Sarah's fingers laced through his. I wouldn't have it any other way. The moment settled between them with the weight of commitment that transcended the bond's biological component. This was choice agency, two people deciding their future, rather than letting fate or biology dictate terms. The weeks following the summit passed in reconstruction and consolidation. Victor Cross stood trial for war crimes, the proceedings broadcast across packed territories as warning and closure. His conviction was unanimous. Sentence was life imprisonment without possibility of release. The surviving old council members received similar judgments. Thalia's rogues were formally integrated into progressive pack structure with full legal recognition and protection. The 200 outcasts found official acceptance validation that their suffering mattered and their contributions had value. Thalia herself took position as liaison between traditional packs and reformed governance, her experience uniquely qualifying her for the role. Elena began speaking publicly about her captivity, giving voice to true Omegas who'd suffered under traditionalist ideology. Her testimony became foundation for expanded protection laws and rehabilitation programs. Strength emerged from trauma, purpose from pain. Marcus implemented reforms addressing root causes of the conflict, economic disparities between territories, representation gaps in governance, cultural conflicts between generations. The work would take years, but the framework established that preventing future wars required more than just defeating current enemies. Sarah took position as Director of True Omega Affairs, creating support networks and legal protections for the most vulnerable members of werewolf society. The role suited her perfectly, combining intelligence experience with personal understanding of the challenges True Omegas faced. 6 months after the summit, Marcus stood at the memorial wall with fresh names carved in granite. 89 additions, including Colonel James Reed, at the top of the new section. He traced Reed's name with fingers that still expected his friend to appear with tactical suggestions and dark humor. Sarah joined him, her presence offering comfort that had become essential. He'd be proud of what you built. The reforms, the peace, the new structure that prevents future victors from gaining power. Marcus nodded, throat tight with grief that hadn't diminished with time. He'd also mock me for getting sentimental. Sarah's laugh carried warmth. Then let's honor him by living well, moving forward, building the world he died protecting. They walked from the memorial together, hand in hand, toward the future Reed's sacrifice had bought them. 2 years later, Sarah went into labor during a council meeting. Marcus abandoned governance to be present for the birth of twins, boy and girl, both showing unusual traits that suggested their true Omega/Alpha bloodline carried unique potential. The medical team monitored, carefully concerned about complications from Sarah's damaged organs. But the twins arrived healthy and screaming with indignation at entering the world. Marcus held his son, while Sarah cradled their daughter, both parents overwhelmed by the weight of new responsibility. Elena visited the next morning, her face showing healing that time, and therapy had gradually built. They're beautiful, strong. You've given them something I never had freedom to choose who they become. The twins grew quickly, developing capabilities that fascinated and occasionally worried their parents. The daughter showed ability to sense other true omegas at distance, potentially evolutionary adaptation that could help locate those who needed protection. The son displayed alpha traits combined with omega empathy, suggesting new possibilities for future generations. Marcus watched his children play in the courtyard. 5 years later, their laughter carrying joy he'd thought impossible during the darkest days of the war. Sarah appeared beside him, pregnant again, their third child due in 3 months. Her voice carried contentment he'd spent years helping build. We built something worth protecting, not just territory or power structure, actual future where our children can be whole people rather than just their biology. Marcus pulled her close, feeling the bond between them pulse with strength that had only deepened over years of partnership. Reed would have loved them, would have spoiled them rotten and taught them inappropriate jokes. Sarah leaned into him. Then we'll tell them about him, about all the people who fought so they could be born into a better world. That's how we honor the dead, by making their sacrifice matter. The memorial ceremony happened annually, Marcus addressing assembled packs before the wall of names. Each year, fewer new names were added. Each year, peace held despite occasional tensions. The reforms implemented after the war had created structure that channeled conflicts into political rather than violent resolution. Not perfect, never perfect, but better than before. Marcus stood at the wall 10 years after the war, his twins grown to 15 and showing signs of leadership potential that gave him hope for the future. His third child, a boy named James after Reed, stood beside him, reading names with solemn respect. Sarah joined them, her hand finding Marcus's with automatic ease. You look contemplative. Marcus gestured at the wall. 328 names before the war, 89 during. 12 since. Peace isn't free, but we're learning to maintain it cheaper than through constant war. His daughter approached her ability to sense true omegas, having developed into sophisticated awareness of emotional states. Dad, there's someone in distress 3 territories over. Female young hiding. Marcus smiled at his daughter's compassion and commitment to protecting others. Then we'll find her. Bring her in. Make sure she knows she doesn't have to hide. This was the future Reed had died for. Not absence of problems, but systems to address them. Not perfect peace, but tools to maintain imperfect version. Not end of suffering, but commitment to reducing it. Marcus raised his hand to Reed's name one final time. We're doing okay, brother. Not perfect, but okay. Sarah's arms wrapped around him from behind. The next generation is ready, stronger than we were, smarter, better prepared. Marcus turned to face his family, wife, children, the pack he'd built through 2 decades of hard choices. Then maybe it's time to let them lead, pass the responsibility to people who will carry it forward. The decision had been building for months. Marcus was 52 now, his body carrying scars from too many battles and his mind tired from too many command decisions. Time to step back and advise rather than lead, let younger voices shape the future. Sarah saw the resolve in his expression. You're ready to retire. Marcus nodded slowly. I'm ready to live. We did our part, built foundation. Now it's time to trust others to build on it. The transition happened over 6 months, Marcus systematically delegating authority and training his successor, a 40-year-old alpha named Catherine, who distinguished herself through diplomatic resolution of 3 territorial disputes and military competence during the war. She understood both aspects of leadership, balanced force with negotiation, respected tradition, while embracing necessary change. Marcus's final act as AlphaKing was pardoning 23 traditionalist fighters who'd surrendered during the war and shown genuine reformation. Mercy rather than vengeance, hope rather than revenge. The gesture sparked debate, but ultimately strengthened rather than weakened progressive governance. He and Sarah moved to Montana to a cabin near the memorial wall where Marcus could visit Reed when the need arose. The twins stayed in Seattle training under Catherine's mentorship. Young James divided time between parents and capital, soaking up knowledge from both environments. 5 years into retirement, Marcus stood at the wall during annual ceremony as observer rather than speaker. Catherine addressed the assembled packs with confidence and wisdom that reassured him the future was secure. His children stood among the crowd, ready to take their places in governance. Sarah squeezed his hand. Still worried, Marcus shook his head. Not worried, grateful. We survived, built something worth keeping, raised children who'll do better than we did. That's victory. As they walked away from the memorial toward their quiet life, toward peace hard-won and carefully maintained, Marcus allowed himself something he had denied for 20 years, the belief that maybe finally the war was truly over. Behind them, the memorial wall stood with its 328 names, testament to cost of peace, reminder of price. Paid promise to those who came after that. Some sacrifices mattered enough to build futures on. Reed's name remained at the top of the newest section, forever 48 years old, forever the brother who died so others could live. Marcus whispered the same words he'd spoken every visit for 15 years. Tell them I died well. The wind through the pines carried no answer except the certainty that Reed already knew.